family law, landlord.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You are tuned in to Ramadan FM 2018. Today with me here in the studio, I have Sister Anisa and Sister Khadija. We are students of Al Minhaj Institute, and today we will be having a really short discussion, seeing as though we don't have much time, on Deen versus Dunya. Before we begin, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum to viewers and sisters here. I'm Elisa.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name's Khadija.
Okay. So first of all, should we start off by explaining what Deen versus Dunya is, and why Islam considers Deen as how Deen is, and
Okay, yeah. Today, so basically, we decided to do the topic of Deen and Dunya because it's one of those topics that we discuss a lot nowadays. So we'll start off with how what Islam actually means. So Islam is not just a religion. Islam is religion as well as it has a social and economic and political aspect to it as well. So the religious aspect actually teaches us the way we worship and the way we have relationship with Allah Almighty, and the political and social aspect tells us how to deal with people. And basically so you can say that one part aspects of religion actually deals with hereafter and gaining the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas the social and political aspect deals with dunya, so it covers both of them and in the definition of Islam.
I feel like Deen versus Dunya is a very interesting topic to talk about because often people get confused and they feel like Deen is more extreme than it actually is, and it's shown to be that way when it's not. And obviously, us as people living in a society, we have to keep that balance between the both. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from an Islamic point of view, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, Inna Deen in the Lahi lil Islam. Truly, Islam is the only Deen, religion in Allah's sight. So this is just from an Islamic perspective, but obviously people would look at this and automatically assume the wrong and argue that, oh, so what about other religions? But in another part of the Quran, Allah mentions that it is important for you to respect other religions and to never talk against them, and to respect every other person's attitudes and how we should treat them as individuals.
Yep. And one more, Islam is a complete code of life for us. So living in this dunya, we cannot neglect deen or we cannot neglect dunya either, because deen gives us the guidelines. So Islam gives us the guidelines as to how we live in this society, we live in this dunya, and how to tackle problems, whether that's to do with college or even marital life or household problems. So yeah.
yep, that's
Yeah.
absolutely right. So we've discussed what Deen is and what Dunya is, and the comparisons in between them both. Sister Anissa's explained what it is and how people view it. I wanted to ask you about how do you think both can come together in hand, or do they have to be separated and just focusing on just the deen or just focusing on just the dunya? How can someone balance the two of them? And how can someone balance the both of them?
I feel like, in my opinion, we as individuals in our everyday life, we balance between the both of them. So for example, I go to college every single day. I go 5 days. I'm learning, whatever I learn in school is for my dunya, is for me to perfect in my dunya so I can succeed further, have a good job, grow up, live life a bit. But as well as that, when I come home, I pray 5 times. I've been going to Tarawih, as well as revising for my A-level exams I've got. I've also been keeping all my fasts. So this shows the balance between deen and dunya. So I'm not only just focused on just fasting and just praying and just being stuck at home, whereas I'm also going out, preparing for my exams. I've got a job interview coming up, so there is obviously a balance between the
Best of luck with
the
the job interview.
Yeah. Sister Nisa, how do you balance both your deen and your dunya?
I think we can, or both of you can also relate to this, is that while we go college 5 times a day, on weekends we actually prioritize our Islamic studies.
Yep,
so I
absolutely.
think that's how we balance. So Monday to Friday we give it to school, and then Saturday and Friday evenings we give it to our Islamic studies, because I think both of them are important, as because Islam teaches us how to be a better human being and stuff, and while we're growing up we need to know where we are going wrong and what we can do to improve ourselves better. And one really good ayat of the Holy Quran, all of them are really good, but this one particularly because everybody reads that, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar. So this basically tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that make your dunya better as well as hereafter better. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says that both of them are equally as important as each other, so we cannot neglect one and we cannot just go further with only holding one in our hand. Yeah. What about you, Sister Ikra? Any experiences?
Well, yes, of course I believe as well that both deen and dunya should be a balance in our life. We should give enough time to our deen as well as our dunya. I feel like the reason we need to balance them both is because we need them both in this life.
True.
In this dunya you can't live without your deen, and without your deen you can't live in the dunya. It works both ways.
As some people would refer to, they would refer to deen as creed, which means not only understanding your deen, not only understanding your religion, your life, but also as well as practicing it. So I feel like as being a Muslim, it's important to have like a connection, to have this idea of social solidarity and being connected with like a group, because that way you don't have like selfish interests. That way you're more open, you're more liberal to people, you're more, so you're not just this one nasty person, but it actually, and the whole Islam and deen and dunya is the idea of bringing people together rather than distancing them.
So I feel like you need your deen in order to teach you how to live in this dunya and how to come about with the worldly things. Sorry, before I interrupted you.
Oh, no.
Okay.
And also sometimes we think that we cannot balance both of them, as in we say, okay, we've got so much college work to do, we can't go to mosque, or we cannot prioritize our Islamic studies at the same time. But we need to keep in mind that being a Muslim, it's our duty to learn about our religion as well at the same time, because it's further on us to actually have the primary basic knowledge of Islam. If we don't know what our religion teaches us, then there is no point of us being Muslims at the same time, because at least we should know those primary basic things that we do every day, day-to-day life. So I think that's why as well, if you are someone who's really worried and saying that, okay, I can't balance both of them together, or I can just focus on college, or I can just focus on Islamic studies, but remember that if you're focusing on Islamic studies as well, it's a blessing for you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make your other studies better. Our teacher says that a lot to us whenever he wants to give us courage, and it always works. Alhamdulillah.
Absolutely. You just the question I was going to ask you, you've already answered it. Let me ask Khadija then. Okay, so she's explained to us if there was a person, the question I was going to ask you was, if there was a person and they focus too much on their dunya things, what advice would you give them in order to help them focus more on their deen as well? Let me give it the other way around for you. So if there was someone that was focusing a lot on their deen but wasn't focusing on the dunya, what sort of advice would you give them in order to balance the both out?
So like she said, the ayat, the dua that is read most common, tells us that we need to keep a balance between our deen and our dunya. And if somebody is focusing on their deen, that's great, but sometimes people can misinterpret when they're not in the right group. They can lead into they can get misguided, go into the wrong path, become extremists. So that's why you need to keep the balance between your deen and dunya, so you know what's going on in the world, how to act around the people, how to be around them, how to treat them, how to treat yourselves as well. And the idea of like extremists, and also our deen and deen in general teaches us to be humble with one another. It teaches us the idea of bringing people together instead of tearing us apart and stuff. And leading to this, as you know how people say कि Allah ले भी सकता है, अगर Allah ने दिया तो Allah ले भी सकता है.
हाँ जी,
So
बिल्कुल, absolutely,
it's the
yeah.
idea of staying humble all the time, because you know, if one thing is taken away from you and you adore that thing so much, you literally you can get misguided really easily,
Yeah,
because you're
absolutely,
weak at that
yeah.
point. But in order for you to build your strength, you need to have that connection with your God. You need to have that connection with your deen, to have that connection with your group, your social solidarity.
Okay, I think we have a call on the line. Should we see who that is? Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Walaikum assalam. How are you, sister?
Alhamdulillah, we're good. Who do we have here, and where are you calling from, sister?
I'm Zarvesha and I'm calling from London.
Assalamu alaikum, sister Zarvesha. How are you?
I'm okay, alhamdulillah. How are you? How's your fast going?
Alhamdulillah, we're good. Fasting is going. Alhamdulillah.
You guys are doing a very good show, mashallah, and I think the topic as well.
Thank you very much, Jazakallah.
Would you
I
like to
have a question for you.
yeah.
Yeah, so, a lot of people, they sort of separate deen and dunya, but do you think that, so for example, education and stuff, do you think it's part of deen, the worldly life, do you think it's part of deen as well?
I personally think it's part of deen,
Definitely, yeah.
because it, like I said, it's the idea of bringing you together, and not only just focusing on one aspect.
Yeah.
I'll give you a really good
Yeah.
example, Zarvesha, is that, when we study science, all the theories or everything about the matter and stuff, it has already been mentioned in the Holy Quran, and now we are studying that. So that clearly shows that there is a big link between our dunya study as well as our Islamic studies, because the stuff that we're learning right now in the dunya has already been mentioned in the Quran. So we can always put them together and keep them side to side.
Ji, bilkul. I think that's a very good answer, so thank you for answering it, and you guys are doing
Thank
a
you for
very
calling.
good
Yeah,
show.
Jazakallah
So
for
well done.
calling.
No worries. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Walaikum
assalam.
assalam.
That's actually one of the most important questions I think people ask everybody nowadays. So it's
Yep.
good that Sister Zarvesha asked, and I hope I answered it
Yep.
very correctly. I tried.
So I just want to discuss quickly the advantages and disadvantages. So sort of, okay, just let's quickly take that call before we go back. Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Walaikum assalam.
Who do we have here, and where are you calling from?
This is Noor calling from London, and I just want to say I really like the topic you have chosen to discuss today, because I think it's a really important topic that people should focus on, because not many people really understand the meaning between deen versus dunya. So I just wanted you, I heard Baji Khadija talking about being humble, so I just wanted her to give some tips for our viewers how to be humble and how we should maintain that humbleness.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, so one tip that I would give is the idea of wearing a hijab. I feel like people who don't wear a hijab often get very judged, and even people who do wear them, they often give them slight comments, and that in general can make a person really, really upset, because at the end of the day, Allah has given you a choice. It's because Islam is not as strict as people suggest that it is. So I guess in that way that people should be a bit more nicer. If you want to approach someone, approach them in a nicer way, and not to just say it directly that, oh, you're not wearing a hijab, it's not right, it's not, because in that way you're no one to judge them. But if you want to guide them into a right path, then there's other reasons, you should be like, oh, I go to an Islamic class every weekend, would you like to come with me? So there's other ways of
Coming about it, yeah.
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 Just adding on to Sister Khadija's point, we most of the time compare ourselves with people who are superior to us, and we say, oh look, that person has such a nice thing, or they're so lucky to have that, but we never see people who are inferior or who are actually struggling or less at a disadvantage maybe. And I think if we compare ourselves to those people who are inferior, who are less able to provide themselves with food, shelter, clothing, then we can actually start becoming more humble as well, and appreciating what Allah Almighty has given us, and also praying for all other people who don't have those stuff. So I think that's one of the ways you can actually be humble as well, and what Sister Khadija said.
Yeah. So hopefully that answered your question, Sister Noor.
Yes, it did. Jazakallah, and carry on with the good work, guys. And it's a really good discussion, mashallah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for calling in.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Oh,
Seems like we have another caller.
do we have another caller?
I think so.
Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello. Okay, the call must have been dropped.
Please do call back in. We'll be waiting for your call.
Okay. Right, so sorry, carrying on. So like I was discussing, advantages and disadvantages. What sort of advantages would you say there is of being able to balance both deen and dunya?
I feel like you get to live the best of both worlds. So like, as Muslims, we believe that at the end of the day, the more harder we work for our deen, we're gonna go to a rank in Jannah. And I feel like that's everybody's goal. You know how everybody have goals? Oh, I want to do this. I want this car. I want to do this. But then, we strive for that goal. And working towards that is like, it's a benefit. It's an advantage because it's given to us. And then we can take advantage of that. We can say, the more we work harder, the more we want to put ourselves into deen, we can come into it.
True.
And yeah,
Sorry.
go on.
No, sorry. Okay. Okay. We should take a call first, and then
Okay, let's just take this call then.
It's an advantage because
Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Who do we have here and where are you calling from?
Hello.
hello, assalamu alaikum.
Hi, this is Muhammad Zishan, and I want to congratulate all of you. You are discussing very, very good topic. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, mashallah. I just want to add one thing, if you allow me, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, there's a very good topic, and the way you have chosen it is very good because normally public think like there's a comparison between deen and dunya. But my understanding is a bit different in this regard. I think everything comes under deen. Okay, there is no comparison like dunya and deen they are against with each other. No, deen is the name of totality. Everything comes under the orbit of deen. Okay, like as sister mentioned when she started, by Sister Anisa, she mentioned like we have two relations in this world. Like we have relations with God, we have relations with our people in this world. So these two aspects, everything come under the orbit of deen. If I want, like, if I'm going to learn something in this dunya, so that's why this is the part of deen. We cannot. So dunya is the part of deen. Okay, so we cannot make difference between them. And on the day of judgment, the beautiful thing is we are going to be accountable for both things. Like we are going to be accountable for our religion, for our relationship between us and God, and we are going to accountable regarding the relationship in this world. Like being a male and I have a son, I'm accountable for a son, I'm accountable for brother, I'll be accountable for husband, I will be accountable for other things. Like I work for somewhere, a lot of people work under me, so I am a part of the society, I'm a part of the international community, so I will be accountable in all aspects. So deen is the name of totality. Everything comes under the orbit of deen. So to my understanding, so there is no comparison between them. So on the day of judgment, if my prayers are good, my fastings are good, my hajj is good, I have been paying charity, everything will be good. So according to my religion, I will be perfect. This aspect will be perfect. But dunya, that aspect in which I live in this world, if that is not perfect, I will not be deserving Jannah at all. So being a Muslim, if I have to have balance in my life, I have to work for both. Because the verse of Quran says, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. You have to make this world better, and then you have to make your hereafter better. If someone works just for this world and he tries to make this better, but he does not work for the hereafter, it means he is doing this partial thing, not the complete thing. And someone all the time he prays 5 times daily prayer, all the time he keeps fasting, he performs Hajj every year, pays charity all the time. So one aspect is good, it means he's trying to make his hereafter better, but not this world. He is not fulfilling his responsibilities towards his parents, towards his children, towards his wife, towards his other relation in this world. So it means he is not fulfilling, he is not obeying the full commandment of Islam. So Islam is a deen, which is the name of totality. On one hand, we have to take religion, and on other hand, we have to take the socio-political aspect of deen, and then we are successful in the court of Allah. So this is my very brief understanding.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Jazakallah.
And I think that was the need of the time. We should discuss these topics, inshallah ta'ala. And the way you have been mentioning, mashallah, Sister Ikra, Sister Khadija, very amazing, mashallah. And Sister Anisa is always, mashallah, is there. So may Allah bless all of you and give you more strength, inshallah ta'ala. And we are watching you, how you are going to add something. If you have different opinion what I have said, so please counter my argument, okay? So I'm going to watch all of you live. So nice of you. Thank you.
Jazakallah.
Just adding on to that, I've just remembered a quote by
I think.
oh no, we have another caller.
Is that? Yep.
Okay, cool then.
Okay. Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I just wanted to say that you girls are doing a great job, and the topic that you've chosen is great as well, because it's so relevant, and we find so many young people struggling, and they're trying to choose between deen and dunya without realizing that it's actually supposed to be together. So I think well done for choosing this topic, and you guys are doing a good discussion as well, and you're mentioning some very important topics. I just had a question. I just wanted to ask, is it possible to be successful in dunya with deen? So because I think that's one of the questions that the people have, discuss the most, and that's seen as an issue, that if we are with deen, somehow we lose on the success of dunya. So is it possible to be successful in dunya if you're following deen or if you're with deen?
It's a really good question. Inshallah, we will try our best to answer. But as you know, we are students, but we will try, inshallah. With
no, you're doing a great job.
Jazakallah.
No, well done to all of you.
Thank you.
No problem. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. I think before we answer Sister Aisha, I think Sister,
did you want to
add
Yeah,
something
I wanted to add something to what Allama Muhammad Zishan said. And this is a quote from Dr. Muhammad Tahir al-Qadri. And he says, live in this world, but don't let the world live in you.
It's my favorite quote.
That is what I just
I
gained.
love that. Yeah.
I think that sums it up basically.
That
Does sum it up. Yeah. So, sorry, could you repeat that? So,
live in this world, but don't let the world live in you.
But don't let the world live in you. Absolutely.
So this shows that you're free to do what you want. You're free to choose your path, as in if you want to go deen and dunya, which is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay, Sister Aisha's question. Anybody wants to answer?
So, yeah, I just wanted to say, I think, yes, living in this dunya, having your deen with you is the absolutely most best way to be successful. I believe that because that is what our deen teaches us. I mean, our deen, it teaches us these skills and how to live in this world. All these hadiths, everything, they explain to us how to come about in different sort of circumstances, situations. So I think having your deen with you is the best way to be about in this dunya.
Yeah. Just adding on to Sister Ikra's, what I think it's my own personal experience. I think learning deen, and it can help you a lot with your studies as well as your life here in this world. Because while I study, like I'm studying Arabic and other Islamic studies that I do, I think we gain a lot of different skills from those subjects, and those skills can be used in our practical life as well as our academic life. So definitely I think deen is, I think it's, for me, it's the main, I think, source of where I get all my, I think, success from. And yeah, I think it's probably the same with you too as well.
Yeah, just adding on to you, I feel like that deen is the way to go, because even for me as an individual, I didn't used to come to the mosque a lot, but once I did, and like how young individuals start to have conflict with each other, and it just goes on for years and years, and it just goes on for such a long time, and then this girl told that girl, and that girl came up to me and she told me something else, and he told me something else, and it just goes on and on and on, and it doesn't finish. But when I came to the idara, like when I came to the mosque, when I came to Minhaj al-Quran, I found that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran, and he has mentioned in the Quran, he will only forgive us if we forgive others.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
if we ask and if we apologize to them. So it's like this whole idea of, it puts that fear in your heart that if I don't forgive this person, if I do not say sorry to this person, is Allah gonna forgive me?
Yeah.
Am I gonna be at that stage where he's gonna be like, because Allah has said that we, like Anisa has said before, we have a relationship between man and man and man and God. So God says, forgive your fellow, and ask for forgiveness from them, and I will forgive you. That shows the entire connection between the cycle of man and God and man and man. So I feel like that's really important, and that's what I've learned: to forgive, to forget, to apologize, to not create conflict, to stay away from that sort of stuff.
And it's not just in our youth right now. I think even our elders sometimes, they get into conflict and stuff, and sometimes it's really hard to actually pinpoint who's right and who's wrong. But how we know who's right is by reading the Quran, reading the hadith and sunnahs of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and that's how we can make ourselves a better human being as well. And just adding on to Alama Saab's point about how everybody has relationships. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created different relationships in this dunya, like siblings, mother, father, husband, wife, and friends, all those different relationships, and you basically have responsibilities to fulfill towards each of them. And if you are just focusing on deen, then you won't be if you just focus on one of them, then you won't be able to have a balance between the both, and you won't be able to prioritize and fulfill those responsibilities properly, because deen actually teaches us all those responsibilities and what to do and what not to do. So I think that was a really good point that Alama Saab mentioned.
That's a beautiful point being made. Also, just coming back and touching up on what Alama Zishan Saab said, and also what Baji Aisha said as well, about how they both are connected and being successful as well, and how they are both connected and they come together. There's no separation between them both, because, for example, like you discussed your own experiences, I would say the same with me as well. For example, when we've got an exam, or I don't know, things get hard in life, what do? We turn to our deen, we turn to our Lord, and we pray and stuff. So the fact that we're turning back to our deen for this dunya shows that that's how we are becoming successful, because that's what we need in this life.
And so it shows a really strong connection between the two.
Of course.
I think we are reaching towards the end.
I think this is the last call.
Okay.
Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. How are you, sisters?
Good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. I just had to make a phone call. Mashallah, your show is going so well, and you sisters are coming up with amazing points, and just keep up the good work. And I thought I'd just give a bit of input from my side, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like you sisters have said that, deen and dunya, it's not really a versus, it's more of together. I just want to say that, I absolutely agree with that. The word deen itself, includes dunya, because that's how Islam, I think, is, different from other faiths, that deen actually means a complete way of life. So you can't have a complete way of life if you're just picking and choosing aspects. And I think that, people are mainly divided. We're usually divided into two categories, like you sisters have already mentioned. We either have people who are giving too much importance to, worldly affairs, such as our day-to-day jobs, for example, and neglect the religious side. And then we also have people who are, on the other hand, they might be spending their whole day, on the prayer mat, in the mosques, and they might be neglecting, their families. And their other aspects. So just like you've all said, I totally agree. We have to strive to keep a balance in between, and that's where the challenge is. That's the tricky part. That's the real test. And I just want to add that we've got various examples, from the Sunnah and Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that stress on the importance of both aspects. And one example that came to mind is, I don't remember the exact words, but there's a Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that talks about there was a lady who was she was a sinner, and she was quite well known to be a sinner. And so her actions would ultimately have led her to the hellfire. But once she saw a thirsty dog, and she gave some water to that dog. Some of your sisters might have heard of that hadith as well.
Yeah.
And that action was so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He forgave all her sins.
Subhanallah.
Now, we could see, in a way, we could kind of say that, she was neglecting her religious side, but she did something worldly. We could call this worldly, feeding an animal. And that act, was kind of overridden. And then in another example, again, I don't remember the exact words, sorry, but there was someone who was mentioned to the Prophet ﷺ that this person, they're very pious, they're very religious, but they're very disrespectful and very harsh towards, the general public. They come across as very arrogant, they come across as very rude, but they're always worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Prophet ﷺ said about this person that this person will not enter Jannah. So this is, you can clearly see the comparison, and there's someone who's neglecting one side totally. We are not successful that way.
I think we're running out of time. I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much, Baji.
No problem. I'm sorry for the late call, but keep up your brilliant work.
It's a great way of educating us, reminding us, and also for the listeners as well, for sharing your thoughts as well and ideas. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you calling in and sharing and joining in with our discussion today.
You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Baji.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I think the most beautiful thing is that relating everyone with I think sunnahs and hadiths of Prophet, peace be upon him, is the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
I think that's our last point that we want to make, that follow the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And if you follow, then you will be on the right path, because Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the dunya as well as deen together. So we would like to say Allah Hafiz to our viewers, and inshallah we'll be back.
Thank you for tuning in and giving us your time. Hopefully you learned something or enjoyed listening to our discussion. Of course, at the same time, having this discussion, we're still students, we're still learning, but at the same time having this discussion,
it really opens your mind.
It really opens your mind, absolutely. Again, extremely sorry for the really shortage of time.
And I know the calls are still coming in, but unfortunately
we're very sorry.
Yes. Thank you very much for listening, and assalamu alaikum.